This is Jay Sekulow. I've got breaking news. New details expose the FBI's multi-state task force targeting Christians.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jay Sekulow.
Hey, everybody. Well, we've got it is breaking news, and it's a case that we initiated at the ACLJ. You remember that memo that came out from the Richmond field office, so that's where it purportedly came out from, involving the FBI surveillance of what they called traditionalist or radical Catholics. This created quite a stir up on Capitol Hill because the idea that you would be targeting a religious group because you don't like their views is certainly against what the First Amendment says. But the way the FBI tried to cabin this was saying, hey, look, this is just one field office, one memo. It's not this, vast, what they call multi-jurisdictional approach to this. This was just a one-off. Let me play back for you what Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, said at the hearing when asked about this memo. And by the way, we're in federal court on this case.
Your FBI wrote a memo talking about radical traditional Catholics. I'm just wondering if you could define it for us.
Well, what I can tell you is you're referring to the Richmond product, which was a single product by a single field office, which as soon as I found out about it, I was aghast and ordered it withdrawn and removed from FBI systems.
Okay, so let me break this down. So he says, and what this actually means. Well, what I can tell you is you're referring to the Richmond product. That's FBI talk for this was a product that originated and only was involving Richmond, Virginia field office, which was, by the way, problematic in and of itself. Then he said it was a single product in a single field office. Neither one of those are true. So those are false statements. He found out about it. He was aghast and ordered it withdrawn and removed from the FBI system. So let's just put out the facts here. That's not the facts of what happened here, Logan. This was not one office. It was multi-jurisdiction, and it was a national coast-to-coast investigation.
Yeah, as expected, this was a very targeted attack on Christians, and specifically on Catholics, due to things like their pro-life views, due to issues that you hold near and dear to your heart, but for some reason, the FBI feels like that you can't even think them, much less talk about them. And, of course, we find out that, of course, it's not just one field officer. This is a real big operation happening inside there.
Let's put up on the screen for our audience that's watching us on our social media platforms. This is the document that has now been unclassified. And in it, the document says that when you just mentioned pro-life groups, that they define radical traditionalist Catholics is demonstrated through increased hostility towards abortion rights advocates on social media sites. And they talk about the run-up to the overturning of Roe versus Wade. It also says that the Portland and Los Angeles offices were involved in providing the assessment. And as Harry Hutchins is going to talk about later in the broadcast, the L.A. office had churches under surveillance for over a year. Also, in the footnote to this memo that has now been released, they talk about the Virginia ban and the fact that Governor Youngkin has called on the state legislators to enact restrictions that would ban abortions in Virginia after 15 weeks. So the whole premise, which has happened multiple times, and we've seen this happen time and time and time again. This was a one-off. This is how they started the IRS targeting thing. Oh, it was just one-off. That's not the case. I'm going to get into this in great detail because, folks, we are in federal court on this issue. So when you call and say, oh, does anything ever happen? You bet it happens because now these documents are with the House Oversight Committee. There are hearings. There will be changes. People are going to have to correct their testimony. Now everybody knows we're looking at this. I mean, I'll go on into that in great deal, but let me tell you what you need to understand. We're in our almost at our halfway point in our life and liberty drive that could not have really started at a more important time. Look at the cases we're involved in. Chris Wray testified before Congress that the memo was a, quote, one-off. It wasn't. This new memo shows you exactly the opposite. By the way, that was a memo from the FBI. So this is why I need you here. The FBI has been targeting Christians. We want to put an end to that. Go to aclj.org. Support our Life and Liberty Drive. That's the Life and Liberty Drive. Your gift will be doubled at aclj.org. I'm going to take your calls on this. Open up the phone lines. 1-800-684-3110, 800-684-3110.
A Richmond FBI field office created an internal report asking its agents to engage with Catholic clergy members and church leaders to spot signs of radicalization. Now, it lists churches that are a part of a society called the Society of St. Pius X.
What's the difference between a traditional Catholic and a radical traditional Catholic?
I'm not an expert on the Catholic orders.
Well, your FBI wrote a memo talking about radical traditional Catholics. I'm just wondering if you could define it for us.
Well, what I can tell you is you're referring to the Richmond product, which was a single product by a single field office, which as soon as I found out about it, I was aghast and ordered it withdrawn and removed from FBI systems.
You were aghast, then why won't you let us talk to the people who put it together?
In January, that office created an internal report relayed throughout the Bureau, detailing measures to spot, quote, radicalization and, quote, suspicious activity in Catholic parishes, asking clergy and church leadership to get involved. According to this April 10th letter from the House Judiciary Committee, now looking into the matter, the report relied on information from at least one undercover employee.
The fact that the federal law enforcement agency down in Richmond was relying on the designation by the Southern Poverty Law Center of traditional Latin mass goers as being somehow radical or threatening is really troublesome.
We are working on finishing an internal review into what happened
We have to wait. We, the Congress, and the American people have to wait until you do an internal review. It's not a criminal investigation going on here. An internal review before we can talk to the people who wrote this.
The Department of Justice has been weaponized. That's the word we use because it's appropriate. It's the only way to describe what's happened. And effectively, they're doing the bidding of one side. It's not fair. It's not impartial. This is really, really important stuff.
You're right. It will be our undoing.
Sekulow. We're going to take your phone calls at 1-800-684-3110, 1-800-684-3110. Again, continue this conversation if you're just joining us right now about sort of the revelation that just came out that not only was it just one, rogue agent in the FBI, found out it is a whole multi-state task force that have been targeting Christians and conservatives.
Yeah, I mean,
so conservative Christians.
Yeah, so we've got the documents here. Before I get to the documents, I want to go back to what this is. So the Richmond field office issued a memo where they started surveilling and were trying to get human intelligence. That means plants inside the churches to find out what these radical churches were teaching. By the way, these were just traditional Catholic churches. So traditional Catholic church, they want to know what's going on inside. The FBI should never be doing this. Chris Wray got called on it. We found out about it. We filed, by the way, let me put it up on the screen. This is a lawsuit that we filed. We're in federal court on this right now. So this is, again, when you talk about taking action, this is us taking action. In fact, in this case, we just got an order just the other day that tomorrow the parties will meet and confer and file a joint status report proposing a scheduling for the productions in this matter and how the proceedings are going to be handled. And that's Judge Kolar Catelli, who's the judge in charge of that case. That order just came out. So we are in court on this literally tomorrow. So the revelation is the FBI's initial approach was we want to make this. They wanted to, Logan, tamper down that this was a big problem by cabining it into this was just one office, one agent.
Well, that seems to be always the case. They always try to blame it on one person just decided to go rogue and do this, whether it was the IRS, whether it was the FBI. It's never what it always seems to be. But there are times where things can get uncovered, and that's what happened here.
Well, it's exactly what happened here. You heard what happened when Chris Wray testified with Jim Jordan's question. Well, Senator Langford over in the United States Senate and back in March asked questions about this. Take a listen.
This goes specifically into these radical traditional Catholics and explains what a traditional Catholic looks like on it. Help me understand what's happened since then when this has come out.
Well, first let me say that when I first learned of the piece, I was aghast.
As you should be.
And we took steps immediately to withdraw it and remove it from FBI systems. It does not reflect FBI standards. We do not conduct investigations based on religious affiliation or practices, full stop.
Yeah, well, not full stop, because they do conduct investigations based on religious practices, and full stop something else that you need to start here. And Chris Wray needs to correct this, because right now he's committed a false statement. Now, a false statement doesn't mean that he lied. It could have just been he made a false statement and didn't know they gave him bad information. But we got to find out, because it is a multi-state, multi-field office operation here. It is Los Angeles, California. It is Portland, Oregon. It is Richmond, Virginia. So it's a multi-state, both coasts handling this. So this was not a one-off. And in their analysis, on page 4, on footnote H, they talk about the current state of abortion law in the United States, as if that was a justification to go in. This comes on the heels of somebody trying to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh. Why? Because he was part of the decision overturning Roe versus Wade. But they're targeting, it's exactly what our whistleblowers are saying. They're targeting the wrong side here.
Yeah, absolutely. That is what we've seen time and time again, is the targeting. Like I said, when the whistleblower came on our show, said, yeah, we said, if there's a problem with this, shouldn't we be looking into the people who are the ones who are threatening, the ones that are, no, instead you're going after the ones who just have beliefs that are different than your own.
So we have sought, and the Congress has sought also, information for months, and this is just coming out. The FBI, by the way, as I was talking with Will Haynes, our producer, on this, I mean, the FBI was trying to delay this as long as they could, but I don't understand why they don't just correct. They could correct these issues. And they could correct these issues by simply saying, hey, listen, we've looked into this, and this was a multi-state, multi-field office mistake. That doesn't, people have to be held accountable. But you understand what they're doing here. I want you to think about this for a minute. They are going into churches and monitoring what the people are saying and what the pastor is preaching. And that's the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And that's why your ACLJ is involved. So here's what I want to hear from you. I want your comments on Rumble. I think that's very important. I want your comments on, you could talk to us on air as well. What do you think needs to be done here, and how important is uncovering this for you? 1-800-684-3110, 800-684-3110. And we're in the middle of our Life and Liberty Drive. And the timing of that could not have been any more perfect.
Yeah, exactly. We started our Life and Liberty Drive. We planned on really showcasing a lot of the work that we're focused on, whether that's issues of pro-life, whether that's issues of religious liberty. It just happens to be that it doesn't just happen to be. These kind of situations start unveiling themselves, and we get to showcase them to you and show you what we can do in these situations where it's not just a lot of words. And we saw this today with the FBI Director Christopher Wray. He testified obviously before Congress, and they had that whole big exposing the agency of targeting the traditionalist Christians. And it wasn't just limited to that one rogue field office. That was a lie. A newly revealed FBI memo proves that there was actually, obviously we've talked about this, multiple field offices involved, and that is why we need you. And the FBI has been targeting Christians, labeling them, and even sending spies into churches. We've heard that.
Unreal.
That's something we know that's been coming up.
Now.
And we filed a lawsuit against Biden's FBI over this targeting. And Monday we're going back to court. Right now, with the Life and Liberty Drive, every gift helps, and every gift is doubled. So go to aclj.org.
Yeah, we're actually going to be in court. In addition, next week we're in court tomorrow on this. In a proceeding. All right, we're taking your calls at 800-684-3110, 1-800-684-3110. Senator Josh Hawley in the United States Senate also asked about this targeting of Christian groups. Take a listen.
Let me just ask you, as my time expires here, a very direct question. How many informants do you have in Catholic churches across America?
I don't know, and I don't believe we have any informants aimed at Catholic churches. We have a rule against investigations based on First Amendment activity, and Catholic churches are obviously First Amendment activity.
Well,
but I don't know the specific answer to your question.
You don't know the specifics of anything, it seems, but apparently on your watch, this Justice Department is targeting Catholics, targeting people of faith, specifically for their faith views. And Mr. Attorney General, I'll just say to you, it's a disgrace.
It is a disgrace. Merrick Garland is another one that doesn't seem to know anything. And when you talk about targeting their views, they defined the radical Christian groups as those that demonstrate their increased hostility towards abortion rights. And as I said, there's a footnote that discusses Virginia law and how it's being changed. This is in the memo, folks. And now we find out that Portland, Oregon, and Los Angeles, you're talking about big field offices, were also involved in this investigation. So this thing is now mushroomed, if you will, from a rogue office in Richmond, Virginia, which is probably a pretty large office in Richmond, Virginia. Let's be realistic. It's the capital of Virginia. To Los Angeles, which is probably in the top 3 or 4 of their field offices, and the Portland office, which is also huge. And what you're going to find out when Harry Hutchison joins us is that they were putting surveillance going on for a year. So it's bad enough that they didn't tell us the truth. It's worse that they come in and then basically make false statements saying it was one-off, I was appalled. All of that sounds great, but the facts, folks, I'm holding the evidence. You can see it on the screen. This is their own analysis. This was a big report. Here's the problem with this. When you look at this report, this is an unclassified report. The way they made it sound, it was like a one-page memo being put out by the office in Richmond. This is 11 pages, single-spaced, on FBI letterhead. United States Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'm holding it in my hand, radio audience, for those watching on our social media platforms. There it is, Logan. 11 pages in detail saying we're targeting these groups when the Attorney General and the FBI Director said, no, it was a mistake out of this one office. And who was this office coordinating to put this report together? Los Angeles and Portland, Oregon. And that's where you've got to understand we are just at the tip of the iceberg on this one.
Does it say in there the origins of why they decided to do this?
Yeah.
Do we know why that they decided to target? I mean, we obviously know that they disagree with the views of these organizations.
Oh, they've decided that anybody that's holding these views are white nationalists.
There
How
you
about
go.
that one?
Yeah.
Okay? Tell that to the Hispanic members of the Catholic Church in Richmond, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay? So you asked the question, there's the answer. And it says, it's actually entitled, Interests of Racially or Ethnically Motivated Violent Extremists in Radical Traditionalist Catholic Ideology almost certainly presents new mitigation opportunities. And you know what they mean by new mitigation opportunities? Spying. That's a new mitigation opportunity. So we're in federal court. We're going to be there tomorrow, and then we're back there next week on this very case. Our Life and Liberty drive couldn't have begun at a more important time, and there's no doubt about that. FBI Director Wray's testimony, obviously, as we showed you, was a false statement. Now that appears to be, uncontroverted. Same thing with Merrick Garland. We've got the newly revealed FBI memo that proves there were multiple field offices involved. L.A., Portland, Richmond. This is why we need you. The FBI has been targeting Christians, labeling them terrorists, white nationalists, because they are holding pro-life views. And they're sending spies into churches. So we filed a lawsuit against the FBI, the Biden Department of Justice, because of this targeting. And we're back in court Monday, but we're actually back in court tomorrow. Right now, every gift will be doubled in our Life and Liberty drive. I want to encourage you to go to aclj.org and support that important drive that we're in right now at aclj.org. Your gift will be doubled. We're also taking your calls. I want to hear from you on this. 1-800-684-3110. Are you aghast? Are you appalled? Like Ray? 800-684-3110.
The ACLJ has a long and distinguished history in fighting for liberty.
At the ACLJ, this is our number one issue. It's why we're founded.
It started with Jews for Jesus and their ability to engage in evangelism. Then it became whether students in high school could start Bible studies and Christian fellowship organizations and events like See You at the Pole. That kind of set us up as the religious liberty team.
Conservative groups were targeted by the IRS.
Remember when we went after the IRS? We broke them after 3 years of pulverizing them in court.
The Party of Tolerance just viciously attacked two peaceful pro-life advocates.
Not of a pedestrian who attacked him, but a pro-abortion extremist.
A former U.S. Navy chief and part-time employee who was forced to resign his position because he wouldn't remove bumper stickers from his personal vehicle that were supportive of President Trump. We will be representing FBI Special Agent Garrett O'Boyle. He was the FBI agent who blew the whistle on the FBI targeting conservatives. And what did the FBI do to him? Suspended him without pay.
Put this guy and his family in a homeless situation.
They were thrown out for wearing hats that had a pro-life message on them.
Legal action is imminent. We've already put them on notice.
We represent the parents and a 15-year-old female student who was forced to perform a profanity-laced, sexually explicit, obscene monologue as a graded assignment.
If you don't want me to read it to you, what was that like for my 15-year-old daughter?
The responsibility of the ACLJ is to make Americans aware of attacks on our freedom. We fight for the liberties and freedoms that make this country great. Join us in our Life and Liberty drive to stand with us in the fight.
Welcome back to Sekulow. Taking your calls at 1-800-684-3110. 1-800-684-3110. Talking about the situation coming out of Washington, D.C., where obviously the memo that came out from Chris Wray's FBI saying, nah, we were wrong. It wasn't just one rogue agent. We have a multi-state thing. And that's good because, we're going to have some big things happen in the next couple of years. And we need to make sure we're focused on it.
And they say in the memo on the front page, the FBI Richmond assesses the RMVE, that's the violence extremists' interest in the traditionalist Catholics, is likely to increase, as Logan said, over the next 12 to 24 months in the run-up to the next general election cycle. So that's why we better investigate.
Yeah, why else would you investigate? Because a general election is coming up.
Because they can't help themselves in putting the thumb on the scale on elections. You realize this? Go back to 2016, 2020, and here we are again. 2020, it's the Facebooks and the Twitters and the social media platforms. I'm sure it's still that. And now it's also, let's get into these churches and find out what's going on. Let's go ahead and take a phone call, and then Harry Hutchinson's joining us as well at 800-684-3110. We got calls coming in.
Sure, Joe,
let's go to those.
Joe's in New York on line 1. You're on the air.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, thanks for taking my questions, guys.
Sure.
I'm a proud American to know that you guys are fighting for us Americans.
Right.
As well as the little man to whoever. But my question is there any whistleblowers that are coming from the DOJ about this topic?
Yes, our client, Agent O'Boyle. He said he was one who pointed out that you're having us look at the pro-life groups, but the violence is being done by the other side against the pro-life groups. So the answer to that is yes. But here's the chilling aspect of this, and Professor Hutchinson's joined us in the studio here, and that is, Harry, you have read these reports and have concluded that based on these reports, they had surveillance of churches going on for over a year.
At least a year. And keep in mind, new evidence
think about that for a moment. I mean, that's a pause moment. A year, at least a year, they are surveilling churches.
Absolutely. And so the FBI has turned itself into an election interference group. Essentially, what they have done is they have taken their marching orders from left-wing ideology groups, such as the Southern Poverty Law Center and others, who now claim that if you're pro-life, if you are a traditionalist Catholic, this means that you are nothing less than a white supremacist who's prone to violence. Nothing is further from the truth, and I believe the American people should put pressure both on Congress and the White House to root out essentially state-supported violence against freedom of religion and freedom of speech.
But, Harry, isn't it the most fundamental of violations of the government for the government through a law enforcement entity, the FBI, the premier law enforcement entity of the world, to be surveilling a church?
Absolutely. So what we are seeing are echoes of 1984 in a constitutional republic. And so the government is increasingly turning itself into a totalitarian regime. You either support the elites in Washington or we will come after you. And so more and more Americans are being targeted. Why? Because they hold traditional pro-life Christian beliefs. On the other hand, if you are a member of Antifa or some other revolutionary organization, apparently the FBI is under standing orders to stand down and not necessarily prosecute those entities. Keep in mind that there is evidence available suggesting that FBI agents in Portland, Oregon were told to allow federal buildings to burn.
Yeah, we've talked to, by the way, whistleblowers on that now, too.
And yet, here we have a situation in Richmond, in L.A., and in Portland, where traditionalist Catholics who believe in the pro-life cause, they are being targeted. Yet there's no evidence, there's not a shred of evidence suggesting that they are prone to violence. And so what is the federal government doing? It is trying to shrink the First Amendment rights, freedom of speech rights, and free exercise rights of American people.
The caller asked, what have our FBI agents said about all this and that we're representing? And by the way, we spoke to Harry this week, U.S. Marshals from Portland that are whistleblowers, and their reports are unreal. I'm just going through. We had a couple of our senior lawyers were on the call yesterday. I think we had 3. I'm reviewing those reports actually this afternoon, but this is another case. But Agent O'Boyle from the FBI was on our broadcast. Here's what he said.
I even told them that ACLJ is taking me on as a client, and I said the time is now. You guys can all start coming forward. We have the legal capability. We have the connections to Congress. Like, everybody needs to be whistleblowing about the things they're seeing, because I'm sure what me and others have done, we're just scratching the surface.
By the way, Logan, on the scratching the surface part, I couldn't say that any stronger than Agent O'Boyle. This is just the beginning.
Yeah, and I think we've been able to reveal that every couple of days. It seems like there's something big that we can report on, and it's pretty fascinating to see it all kind of come out at one time.
So, we're giving you expert analysis here. That's part of what we do at the ACLJ, but we're also in court. I'll put it up on the screen right now. This is the federal lawsuit that we filed in this case. We're in court next week, but we're also in court on this tomorrow. We just found that out. There's a status conference where the court wants to meet and confer and get this thing rolling. We want the documents. I cannot imagine what we're going to see now. Now that we've got this information coming forward, I'm sure the document reveal is going to be breathtaking in scope. And we're going to take more calls when we come back from the break. But I want to say this, folks. We are not quite at the halfway point yet, but we're, 11 days into?
10 days.
10 days into our new Life and Liberty Drive. And this is focusing on, we evaluate. I look at the comments that you are during the broadcast. I look at them in the evening. So we looked at the 2 issues that matter the most to you, life and liberty. And in this case, involving the FBI, it is both life and liberty. Targeted because their life, liberty because their churches are being investigated. And that's fundamental to, as Harry said, you can't do that in a constitutional republic. So your support of this makes a huge difference. And our Life and Liberty Drive has begun. Logan, we've had a great start so far.
Yeah, I mean, the response has been overwhelming from our crew and from everyone who has really joined the ACLJ over the last 10 days. So many new people. We can look at the difference in numbers from just last year at the same time, see that thousands of new people have come on board who have never even engaged with us before. We're glad that we give you this opportunity with the ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive, that we could give you this moment to get yourself engaged. Again, not like a lot of other shows that just talk about the news. You'll hear about this memo going up. You'll hear about it on mainstream news or covering it on Fox just a little bit ago.
They're not in federal court dealing.
They're not, and that's where it's a little bit different for us.
So this appears to be the time for you to join with us. We're in our Life and Liberty Drive, and I want to encourage you. We filed a lawsuit that I showed you on the screen against the Biden FBI that we're going to be in court with tomorrow and again next week. Right now, every gift will be doubled through our Life and Liberty Drive, and folks, this is where you come in. We're standing with those FBI whistleblowers because of your support. We're in federal court to get to the bottom of this and get this corrected with your support. We're defending the church with your support. Go to aclj.org, our Life and Liberty Drive. It is that critical. We got 30 minutes more of this broadcast. If you don't get it on your local station, go over there, aclj.org, or any of our social media platforms. Back with more in a moment. Hi, this is Jay Sekulow. You've spoken and we've heard you loud and clear. That's why this month we're doing something big. We're proud to announce our brand new ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. Our legal teams will be focusing on the issues that you've told us matter the most to you, life and religious liberty. This month, we're redoubling our efforts to beat back the radical left's attacks on your constitutional religious freedoms and to defend the sanctity of human life. Life and liberty are the cornerstones of our great nation, but they're not guaranteed. When the values we hold dear are under attack from within, it's up to all of us to take a stand or risk losing them forever. This is not just a call to fund our legal battles. This is your moment to get in the fight. Every tax-deductible gift you give will be doubled, dollar for dollar, through the ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive, and help us fight to literally save lives. Go to aclj.org right now and join us in the fight.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jay Sekulow.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the broadcast. We have breaking news. It's big news. The FBI said when we caught them red-handed that there was this Richmond field office had engaged in investigations of, quote, radical traditionalist Catholic churches, and basically that meant they were pro-life. And Chris Wray said he was aghast, he was horrified, it's terrible. As soon as I found out about what this one office did, I clamped down on it, listened to what he said in Congress. This is what he said.
Your FBI wrote a memo talking about radical traditional Catholics. I'm just wondering if you can define it for us.
Well, what I can tell you is you're referring to the Richmond product, which was a single product by a single field office, which as soon as I found out about it, I was aghast and ordered it withdrawn and removed from FBI systems.
Well, he was aghast, but it wasn't one office and it wasn't one off. Portland, Oregon's office was part of this. Los Angeles field office of the FBI, part of this. And we are in federal court tomorrow on this very topic, getting to the bottom of it. Merrick Garland said it was a one-off also. It wasn't. It's not. And they were targeting specifically religious groups and defining radical as pro-life. In the report, they have a whole section on there taking pro-life views. And the agents that put this together are complaining about the governor of Virginia restricting abortions further by doing a 15-week bill, which the Supreme Court upheld, of course, in the Dobbs decision. So you look at this and you say to yourself, how is the government, first of all, they're making false statements under oath, which, by the way, if you did it, you'd be indicted. And how do we get it self-corrected? Well, we get it self-corrected by continuing to work with Congress and getting to the bottom of it through our documents that we will be getting because of our lawsuit, which will show us the whole connection of who was talking to who. And then you get results, and you reform this like you reformed the IRS, and you win and you fight back. Let's go ahead and take phone calls on this. 1-800-684-3110, targeting churches they don't like. That's what the FBI's up to.
Let's go to Joseph, who's calling in California online, too. You're on the air.
Hi, Joseph.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I think what you guys are doing is amazing. It's a bold step and somewhat dangerous, but this is the scariest thing I've heard in years, just how they're inside the churches. And the one thing I think churches need to unite. I attended church on the way out here in California some years ago, and if someone would have come to that church and started protesting, I would have been there in a heartbeat. But if it was a church I wasn't a part of, I would have, oh, that's bad, I'll pray for them.
Yeah.
I think we need to unite in some way where, I mean, my voice isn't big enough, but I think someone needs to, like we did with Chick-fil-A. We went out and supported Chick-fil-A in numbers some years ago, and I think the church needs to support, especially you guys. You guys are doing
And the
amazing
best diet
things.
lemonade, I might add, with Chick-fil-A that I've ever had. I try to get that almost every day.
Not an ad.
That's not an ad. No, I'm not doing an ad. I'm just fact.
If they'd like to advertise.
I mean, that'd be great. But to your point, Joseph, let me tell you this. Churches are uniting. And the fact that they say traditionalist Catholic, substitute in evangelical, substitute in Baptist, substitute in Orthodox Jewish. I mean, you want to just substitute it in because it makes no difference. And what we have to do is get to the bottom of it, which we are. We're in federal court. We're working with Jim Jordan's office. Our government affairs team in Washington is working it on the Hill. We are working it also in court. We are doing a lot of media on it, which is today on this broadcast. All of that because of your support for the ACLJ. And as I said, we're in our Life and Liberty Drive. We're really excited about this. We've never done a drive like this in the history of the ACLJ, Logan, the first time.
No, yeah, this is a brand new thing for us, and it really, you guys showed us that it's something that you really reacted to because we have listened. You may have gotten a text message. You may have gotten an email saying, hey, of our top 10 issues, rank them for us. What do you feel is most important to you? We took all that information, plus all the comments we get, thousands of comments each and every day on our live broadcasts and all of the videos and on all of our social media platforms. We see them come in. We decided to focus this month on the Life and Liberty Drive. Worked on it for months, getting this thing ready for you. And you have situations like today, where obviously you heard over the last few weeks, we've talked about the whistleblower situation. This ties in directly because they're going after your pro-life views, just and labeling you a traditionalist Christian or a traditionalist Catholic, and that is enough to say we're going to have the FBI infiltrating your church. Well, that doesn't sound like anything we want here in America. It sounds like that's why we need the ACLJ and the Life and Liberty Drive. So right now, every gift is doubled through it. Defend your faith and freedom. Support the work of the ACLJ, aclj.org. Taking your calls when we get back.
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born.
If you look back at the whole history of the abortion movement, it is tied in with Margaret Sanger, grounded in the perception that certain people are either unfit to live or they are unworthy of life.
Life has always been a top issue since our founding. Either the unborn child is a human being or they're not. The science clearly establishes that that unborn child is a person.
When you're fighting for life, when you're fighting for the life of the unborn, you're on the right side of history, you're on the right side of law.
The radical left has been relentless in trying to silence anyone who refuses to worship at the altar of abortion.
We're going to have to flood the coffers of abortion funds.
We are not going back.
You have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
Roe v. Wade has been overturned, and the question of abortion has been returned to the states.
We celebrated this historic victory at the Supreme Court, but now it's time to put the hammer down and dig even deeper.
This is a fight that is worth fighting for, and it's an issue that is, in our mind, not negotiable. You don't negotiate on life.
We have to step up for the unborn. We've been given this unique opportunity. The battle has really just begun. This is your moment to get in the fight. Every tax-deductible gift will be doubled. Join the ACLJ in the fight to keep America free.
All right, we're taking your calls at 1-800-684-3110. I also want to mention you got President Trump's Twitter account was gone after, and Twitter fought it and lost. The district court judge ordering the documents that were behind it, I think these were private messages primarily, that they wanted for their prosecution. They also found a reason to believe that the former president would be, quote, flee from prosecution. Now, the guy has Secret Service details. This is absurd. The government later acknowledged that it had errantly included flight from prosecution as a predicate. You know, this
like
flight
risk, to clarify. Yeah.
Flight risk. The errantly included. Oh, I made a mistake. I got wrong information. You know, if you did this as a private citizen, you'd be in all kinds of trouble. You'd be telling the court incorrect statements. But no, the government's never held accountable until you fight back like we are and you get a result. All right, let's go ahead and we got a lot of calls coming in. Take comments as well at 800-684-3110. If you're watching on our social media, we encourage you to share it with your friends.
Yep, let's go to Linda, who's calling on line 3. You're on the air.
Hey, Linda.
Yes, I've been wondering for quite some time now why these people who are lying under oath are not prosecuted. Isn't this called perjury? Aren't they supposed to be called right off the bat? You've got the proof.
18 U.S.C. 1001, false statements under oath. That's a catch-all provision where they try to get everybody. But, I mean, Chris Wray made a false statement. Now, did he have intent to do it? I don't know that. We'd have to ask him. What was he just told this is what it was, and he just repeated what he was told? That'd be a different situation. But you're not going to get. Let me tell you what you're not going to get. This FBI under this Department of Justice under Joe Biden and Merrick Garland are not going to do anything. Not going to happen. So we have to do it.
That's right.
Excuse me. In court, we have to do it in court, or we have to do it on Capitol Hill. Those are the two venues for this, and we are doing that, and we're getting great success because they will not. Let me tell you what they're not going to do, Logan. Go into churches, surveilling them, because this is all now public.
Yeah, Mike on YouTube said it always seems like they make mistakes against us that they'll benefit them.
Yeah, well, that's like putting in this order with President Trump. We errantly put in there that he was a flight risk. I mean, this is like, who does this and gets away with it? The government. But that's why you fight back. All right, let's go ahead and take Chris's call.
All right, Chris is calling in Nevada on line 4. You're on the air.
And this goes along with what you were saying. But is anybody else as troubled as I am by the fact that the leader of all these 3-letter organizations never know anything?
Yeah, it does seem like that, Chris, that when they get put on, I don't know. I thought it was just one. Maybe it was one. I don't even know what a traditional Catholic is.
Well, they didn't even answer the term traditional Catholic because that was defined in the memo as pro-life.
Yeah.
And that also makes you a white nationalist, by the way. And as I said, tell that to the Hispanic members of these churches or the African-American members of these Catholic churches that they're white nationalists because they're pro-life. I mean, that is so offensive. But they put it in writing, by the way, in a report issued on their letterhead. I'm holding it in my hand. I mean, we'll put it up on the screen. This is the FBI that's now been declassified. So there it is. There's the document. It's absurd. Now, here's the problem. You get this and you say to yourself, gee, this is pretty horrible. And it is. And if you were reading the definition of what they call traditional Catholics in these memos, you cannot even believe the federal government's writing this stuff. Why would they write it? And then you ask the question, well, what did the heads of these agencies know? They know nothing when they come into this. Now, somebody could have lied to Chris, given him bad information, and he just repeated it. But you know what? He knew this was coming. He should have double verified it. And then when they found out that wasn't the case, you know what he's supposed to do? Correct the record. Not correct the record when we find out in our cases that we found all these documents. No, correct the record up front.
Yeah, Goldie on Rumble asked, why do they always claim rogue people in offices? It seems like that is always the go-to.
That was their famous line. It was a one-off. It was a rogue agent. And, you know, this rogue agent, I think in Cincinnati office is what they said. And when we found out, it was coordinated by the National Office of the IRS. The same thing here. It was just Richmond. Now it's Richmond, Los Angeles, and Portland, Oregon. So what you have to do, you know, as we said, we're in our Life and Liberty campaign. The biggest part of liberty, this case, of course, touches both because they're targeting pro-lifers by the FBI. And the liberty aspect of it is they're doing this inside a church, the government. So the government's going inside the church to find out that the pro-life people are actually pro-life. And now we need to surveil them. And as Harry said, in California, for at least a year, he said, they had churches under surveillance. What does that surveillance look like? Human intelligence, monitoring, who knows what? But we'll find all that out because here's what's happening. We're in court tomorrow on a status conference and what's called a meet and confer. Here's the order. I'm holding it in my hand. We're going to be doing that tomorrow in front of Judge Kolar Catelli. When we're there, we'll get a schedule of production of documents. Now what we're going to find out is how these offices were communicating. And all that information then goes up to Capitol Hill, and then Jim Jordan and the weaponization committees can use all of that in bringing all of these leaders of these FBI agencies back before Congress. But also remember our Agent O'Boyle, who says now he feels empowered because of the ACLJ's involvement. That wouldn't have happened without you. Said this is what was happening. They were targeting pro-lifers.
Yeah, Jeff just asked on YouTube, said, can we ever find out who wrote the memo? We need to.
We know who wrote the memo. So the memo is published under, let me tell you how it works. So it's a threat target facilitation platform. What that means is it's part of a group, the threat assessment group, and it's under the Richmond FBI office. I'm losing my voice. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. We'll continue on. So we'll get that information to you specifically about who wrote it from the Richmond office.
So it's the FBI, the Richmond office of the FBI. The individual agent doesn't sign the memo.
Yeah.
So it's
more of a document to be distributed.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it's for. And what happened here was what we'll find out in our litigation. Who was the people what agents were on top of this? What agents were coordinating with Portland and Los Angeles? And the agents that actually worked it. But the actual agent himself or herself that wrote this, that's not how these memos are put together. These are field reports from the field office of Richmond.
So this is what they're telling you. This is what we've been working on.
This is our document on why this is a threat assessment. They underscore here, they put this down as a threat assessment, that this was a threat to the Republic. But then in it, they said, we got to continue the surveillance, folks, because we're about to come up to a
national general election.
Yeah, there you go again, a general election.
Yeah, I think we have that exact. I'm going to pull up the exact bite, like the not bite, but the section of that, because it is pretty fascinating to read. It says in there, the FBI Richmond assesses the RMVE, which is racially motivated violent extremists, of course, what they label it, interest in RTCs, which is radical traditional Catholics, is likely to increase over the next 12 to 24 months in the run-up to the next general election cycle, complicating the overall threat picture while also creating new opportunities for mitigation efforts. So saying, we know we got to handle this because there's a general election coming up, and guess what we love to mess around with? General elections.
Yeah, well, no, it's exactly what they're doing. I mean, but the boldness
but saying it.
But they say it in writing. Yeah, right. Go ahead. I mean, but they put it in writing.
Right, exactly. They're putting it, it's not like this is hidden. This is a public document that we're all seeing, and it says specifically we got to handle this before we get to a general election.
I think the thing that's so critical in all this is, and the thing we have to point out is, These are complicated cases, though, because there's a lot of legal arguments, constitutional arguments, separation of power arguments, and we've got a team of lawyers that are, we've expanded that team significantly. So what I want to tell you is your support right now is I think the most critical juncture. Of course, they're saying, and they're right, we are coming up to a general election. What's so shocking about the report is, as you said, Logan, they actually put that in writing as a reason they're doing this assessment, because they always seem to want to put their hand on the scale on an election. I don't understand why that is now so. We used to think it was just the leadership, but this is agents.
Yeah, exactly. You do kind of paint it with a brush going, well, we know there's a lot of good people inside that are working, and we do know there are good people. Obviously, we have the FBI with the whistleblowers who are out there saying it's going too far. But we are seeing through that whistleblower process, and now with this, that it's definitely a little bit more in depth, a little bit more embedded into the agencies.
Do you think it's fair to say that our Life and Liberty Drive, which we've never done before, could not have begun at a more important time than these last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I don't want people to think that this is all coincidental, that this just happens to be. Some of it, sure, is the fact that it's obviously you're seeing this as breaking news.
We didn't know some of these cases were breaking this week.
But a lot of them we had planned and ramped up to really showcase them to you as you're headed back into a school year. Our kids are starting back, and you're really wanting to engage with what's going on in culture as we get just a couple weeks from the first Republican debate. We're a little over a year from
the Vice
general
President's
election.
debate?
Yeah, a little over from the general election. That's all coming very soon, and we wanted to have something new for you, and that's why we launched the Life and Liberty Drive. And you're right, it couldn't have happened at a more important time. And when you see the situations like we've had the last few weeks, whether it's the whistleblowers and now Christopher Wray testifying about the traditionalist Christians, or showing that that's not just a one-off, that this is a document that was produced now that said that this was all over, that this was happening, labeling you for being a traditionalist Christian, some sort of terrorist, and they're putting spies in your churches, and they're doing all these things. And we can actually engage and fight back against this. Hope is not lost, and I think that's something we have to always share with you. This isn't about just firing you up. This isn't about just making you upset. This is showing you that we can actually fight back and win, and we have filed a lawsuit against this FBI. We're going Monday back to court, and we have a lot coming up even in the next 24 hours. And right now, every gift is doubled through our Life and Liberty Drive. Defend your faith and freedom. Go to aclj.org to do that today. It's very easy. All donations you'll see, just go through the Life and Liberty Drive right now.
Yeah, and we're going to update on a big case, an international case coming up in the next segment of the broadcast. We'll take your calls as well at 800-684-3110.
Government officials who feel like there is wrongdoing inside our federal government have long been supposed to be protected by whistleblower protection. We now represent Garrett O'Boyle. He was one of the first FBI whistleblowers who came forward earlier this summer to say that their FBI is wrongfully targeting conservatives, pro-life Americans, and parents who are attending school board meetings. He blew the whistle. And then what did the FBI do? They suspended him, moved him across the country, and then took his pay away.
Put this guy and his family in a homeless situation. He's an FBI agent, has served our country well, and he said these words. Take a listen.
But the FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. And we are all examples of that.
This is a guy that was doing his job, investigating cases, and made a whistleblower report under the existing whistleblower guidelines. This is one FBI whistleblower. I will tell you right now, we're already talking to 5 more.
We can represent Garrett O'Boyle in court, and it doesn't cost him a thing. He doesn't have to go and find money or take out loans to hire lawyers. He can get the best attorneys in the world, attorneys who have represented the President of the United States of America before Congress, the impeachment, and the special counsel probe. He gets those attorneys.
43 years of my legal career has been doing what? Changing precedent. It sometimes takes a decade to do it, but we've seen it, including Roe versus Wade, folks. Is it a tough challenge? You bet. Is it an important challenge? There's no doubt. Is it a winnable challenge? Yes. Is it going to take tenacity? You bet. Is it going to take really smart lawyering? Yes. The government is pointing its weaponization right at these agents, and we're going to have to defend them.
Join the ACLJ in the fight to keep America free.
You know, as we said at the beginning of this broadcast, we're in our Life and Liberty Drive, and when you talk about life, we've got a case involving a 16-year-old Christian in Pakistan, Shahzad Majish, was arrested for what they call a blasphemy charge. 16 years old. I've got an email that's out right now. If you're getting it, if you don't get our emails, sign up for them. But if you do receive them, you've gotten this email, and it talks about this 16-year-old, literally a kid, that despite his innocence, he's sentenced to be hung. His death by hanging in this is horrible to say. And the judge, I think, knew that our client was innocent, but he had this angry mob of Muslims that were showing up at these proceedings, and that's why he put the conviction. And now our legal team on the ground in Pakistan has been working on an appeal. That's to the highest court. I wish I could tell you Shahzad was the only case in Pakistan. We have a full office in Pakistan. Cece was just at the United Nations on this case, dealing with the Committee on Arbitrary Detention. And we need to explain a little bit about what that committee is and what they do. But we've got at least some good news here. And this is, when you're fighting these cases, by the way, the job one is keep your client alive while this appeal is going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So while we were at the UN, we were able to actually talk to the permanent mission of Pakistan, actually the minister and the deputy minister. And so we were able to absolutely directly advocate for his release to Pakistan. And then also, like you said, I met with the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, and they are a working group within the UN body that can review cases and actually have opinions on the case. They will make a report usually in the fall.
And the government that's holding the detention has to respond to the UN because they're a new UN member state.
That's right. And so the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has sent their initial communication to Pakistan, and they have to respond. They have 60 days with a possible 30-day extension. But within 90 days, we will have a response from Pakistan.
There's two things that are important about one. Obviously, CC getting them to take it, so accepting jurisdiction is a great win. But also, and this is how you're fighting these cases, folks, we know for that 90 days, he's not going to be sentenced to death. They're not going to execute the sentence because they're under the international microscope. Listen, I'm not a fan of the UN, but you got to be there. I mean, and we are through our European Center for Law and Justice, and we're active there. So this is happening. We've got an email that's out right now. Our legal team on the ground in Pakistan is working on the case through the court system in Pakistan. And we are also working at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, demanding release. And as Cece said, we now got the Committee on Arbitrary Detention accepting the case and requiring a response from Pakistan. All of this happens, and I wish I could tell you this was the only case. There's many of these. This is in the email that's out today. Please respond to this email. Very important for you to do that. It's also part of our Life and Liberty campaign. And listen, life is not just the life of the unborn. It's the life of a 16-year-old in Pakistan being sentenced to hanging because he's a Christian. And that's what's happened here. And our Be Heard project, which we haven't talked about in a while, Logan also gets very involved in these.
Yeah, we're still definitely active. You go to the Be Heard Project website, you can find out.
This information that we just got be on our Be Heard site?
Yeah, I believe it is right now.
Great.
You can already do that. So you can find that. We'll still send out emails and things. So it's still an active project of the ACLJ.
So, Cece, what's the next move in the case then?
Yes, so right now in Pakistan, the courts, we have an appeal filed with the High Court of Lahore, the Lahore High Court. So that appeal is pending. The court right now is on a summer hiatus. So when they get back, we will file a motion to expedite the hearing of that appeal because we do believe we have seen, even in Pakistan, where the blasphemy laws are terrible and false blasphemy charges are brought a lot. But we have seen when you get out of these local courts where the mob rules, when you get out of the local courts, and you get to a high court, you actually get justice. And there was no blasphemy done here. And even the mission, the Pakistani mission, agreed with us. There's no blasphemy to be had here. So hopefully we will get justice at the high court. And in the meantime, like you said, the working group on arbitrary detention has sent their initial communication. And within 90 days, we will receive a response. And then we have an opportunity to reply to that. Let
me tell you this. We also have a prayer initiative going on at the ACLJ, and we have a prayer guide. It's the first time we've done this. And this is not something we're doing every month. This is specifically for our Life and Liberty drive. It's free. You just go to, let me keep that on the screen for a little bit longer, please, aclj.org/pray. That's aclj.org/pray, and you download the prayer guide. And in that prayer guide, we suggest topics and things you could be praying about. One of which is for this weekend is pray for people around the world because their lives are on the line, especially for their faith. I mean, these are the kind of things that are in this prayer guide. It's beautifully done. And, Logan, it's free. Anybody can get it.
Yep.
We've got a whole section of the prayer guide on the persecuted church. In fact, I'm holding it here. I don't know if we have it in our where we can put it up, but I'm holding it.
Individual pages.
This is this is the persecuted church portion of the prayer guide. And it goes through these very issues and gives you things to specifically pray about. Tuesday's prayer this next week is we are actively working to save several Pakistani Christians on death row because of their faith. And we go through exactly what we talked about there. Pray for God to give peace and comfort to the Pakistani Christians. Pray also for the ACLJ's legal team in Pakistan working on the case. Couldn't be more specific. But this is a free prayer guide. You go to aclj.org/pray, and you download that for free. And listen, that's as important or more important than your financial support. And your financial support is important, but praying for our teams and the people that are being persecuted, even more important. But it's all part and parcel of the same thing. And I think over 1,000 people downloaded it yesterday just from the broadcast.
Yes.
I don't know how many more have downloaded it from social media. And I think we're sending out a special email, you said, Logan, Sunday?
I believe so, yeah. But you can just right now just go to aclj.org/pray. Just do that right now, aclj.org/pray. You'll see it's very simple how to download it. There's a mobile version. There's a version you can print out if that's something you prefer. A lot of different ways. You'll get it immediately to your inbox.
All right, let's go ahead and take in the remaining time we have, which is
we only got a minute. So we'll go quickly. Carol in Pennsylvania, you're on the air. Just keep it quick. You're up.
Hello, I have a question, Jay.
Yep.
I want to know where they're getting the names. A list of people have been on March for Life, for pro-life, and I also want to know what they plan on doing with this information.
Well, I think the information is going to go nowhere now. It's going to stay within the bowels of the Department of Justice. You're asking me if on the March for Life, are they getting names? You know what? I've got to assume at this point, and this is horrible to say. I hate even saying this, Carol, but that they probably have agents in the field. And in the field, in that case, would be the March for Life. I don't know that. But I'm concerned. The
signs would point to it. The messaging
the
would say
signs
that.
are pointing to it. And look, we've got 2 cases right now in federal court representing students that were harassed at the National Archives Museum, of all places, and the Smithsonian because they had a pro-life beanie on. So, yeah, this is serious stuff. And this is why we're in the middle of this drive. We've been talking about, Christian kid in Pakistan. We're talking about the FBI. We're talking about our cases and our students. This is where I need your help. And our team needs your help. We're representing these whistleblowers. Let me tell you something. This is the Whistleblower Project alone, and what Logan, I haven't had time to really get into it yet. We've got one of the most premier legal teams we've ever assembled for those whistleblower cases because the retaliation on these whistleblowers is unreal, folks. I mean, it's unbelievable. But because of your support of the ACLJ, we can stand with Agent O'Boyle. We can stand with Marcus Allen from the FBI, who was the Employee of the Year for the Charlotte field office. And believe me, and others that we've interviewed this week that we'll be bringing you next week. So your support's critical. Go to aclj.org. It's the Life and Liberty Drive. Your gifts are doubled. So it means if you donate $50 or $100, and 2 days ago, or is it yesterday or 2 days ago, people were donating $5,000 and $7,000. They were so motivated, and that's doubled. So aclj.org, we really encourage you to do that at aclj.org. And also get our prayer guide. Just go to aclj.org/pray, and that'll tell you how you can pray on these specific cases, the Life and Liberty Drive. We'll talk to you tomorrow.